I have just turned 40. Wow. There have been some serious highs and some pretty bad lows over the last 4 decades. But for the most part, it's been one hell of a ride. So here is a short history of my life so far. I was born on the 6th of April 1981 in Harare, Zimbabwe. I spent the first few years of my life playing on the banks of the Zambezi River before we eventually moved to South Africa. Dad was a rhino conservationist, and Mum spent most of her time making sure I didn't stand on thorns or get bitten by a snake. Then in 1983 my sister was born, and we had the most amazing childhood living in Zululand. I can actually still speak Zulu. Ngicela amanzi kodwa ngifuna ukugibela ihashi. Please may I have some water, because I'd like to get on a horse. I've not spelt it correctly though. Life in Africa was pretty adventurous. Spent most of my time hanging out with Dad trying to save rhinos and generally just living the bush life. And then I went to school. I absolutely loved school, but I wasn't particularly great at anything and I wasn't particularly rubbish at anything either. And this was the same to do with sport. I wasn't particularly good at any sport. I wasn't particularly rubbish at any sport either. Except rugby. I was on the 7th team in rugby. There were only 6.5 teams in my school. That was tough times. And then into my teenage years, I was pretty much settled into a life of mediocrity. That is, until I discovered photography. And that changed everything. Finally, I had some sort of purpose, and that this camera was going to be my passport to traveling the world. I was living the dream because not only did I find something I loved, I found something that I was good at. And that's where I was. But I had a problem. I lived at the bottom of Africa, and it seemed all the proper hardcore adventure photographers lived in the UK. I actually couldn't afford to get to the UK and try and look for photography jobs. I had to get another job before I even left South Africa. I sold everything I could just to afford the flight, and I had £100 left over. So I arrived in the UK on the 11th of February 2002 with £100 in my wallet and headed up to Cambridgeshire to work in a salad making factory. These are the pre-mixed salads I used to make. The lettuces would come up, cut, 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 cut. I was doing 12,000 of these a day. Oh, still can't eat lettuce, hate it. I stuck it out in the salad making factory, working for £5.72 an hour, living in dormitories on bunk beds until I had enough money to move to London. I bummed around and lived on sofas for a couple of weeks until I eventually found a job at Snappy Snaps on Finchley Road, the green and yellow photo lab of dreams. Oh, it was so much fun. There were so many like-minded photographers also working at the lab. I worked 6 days a week, Monday to Saturday, with Sunday off, trying to save enough money just to buy new camera gear when disaster happened. My flat in London got broken into and everything got stolen. It took me another 12 months of working full-time in the lab just to save enough money to buy more camera gear. Another interesting thing happened that year. James Carnegie came back into my life. I met James at college. We studied in Pretoria, South Africa together. James is from Jersey in the Channel Islands, and he decided to come back to the UK, and maybe two minds was better than one, and we created Carnegie and Conway Photography. James and I then moved into a 1-bedroom flat together. We did heads or tails. He landed up getting the bedroom, so I was living in the lounge. There was a problem though, as I didn't have a bed and I couldn't afford to buy one. So we spent that afternoon walking around our local area until we found a skip which not only had a bed in it, it also had a mattress. So it took me 3 turns running up the road to the skip to carry the bed and the mattress on my head. As soon as James and I teamed up, the photography really started picking up. We soon got some amazing adventure jobs in India, Morocco, Canada, the Lake District, shooting catalogues for outdoor brands. I also coincide this era with what I call the bad hair days. No, 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 no. Some would say I'm still in one of those days. So I was still working in Snappy Snaps at this point, but I was in a pub one night with a friend of mine and I got chatting to a guy called Murray Close. And it turns out Murray was the stills photographer for Warner Brothers working on the Harry Potter set. He was complaining about how he was having to shoot slide film, send it to LA to get it scanned for them to send it back on CD, and he thought I should start shooting digital now. And I, after too many pints of course, said, "Don't worry Murray, I'm the best digital guy in the world. Give me a shout, I'll sort you out." I remember waking up that next day thinking, oh no, what have I done? He's never going to give me a call. But blow me down, a couple of weeks later, Murray gave me a call, and for the next couple of years I worked 1 day a week on the Harry Potter films. And no, I was never asked to be Rupert's stunt double. So the photography was going really well. I was shooting for The Guardian, managed to photograph people like Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall and Johnny Wilkinson. James and I also made inroads into the music scene. We photographed people like N-Dubs, Chris Brown, Block Party, Wiley, and the Artful Dodger, of all people. It's around about now that James and I both thought we'd quit our lab jobs. Deciding to go full-time into the photography thing was quite daunting, and we soon discovered that we were going to have to start taking on jobs that were outside of our passion, so we set up another company called Life Pix Photography. We used this company to do all the corporate sort of work, corporate portraits and things like that. Then one day we were asked to photograph someone's nursery school. It was really something we weren't that interested in, but it was a friend of a friend, so we thought we'd do them a favour. There were 100 kids in this nursery school. We went in, photographed all 100, came home, did the Photoshop, sent the parents the contact sheets, and didn't really think anything of it. A week later though, the orders started coming in, and coming in, and coming in. After the success of that first nursery, we decided to go all in. We stopped looking for all creative work because we figured if we photograph more kids, we'll make more money. When I think back now of that terrible decision, you know, I was becoming increasingly irritable with not doing anything adventurous. But I was in too deep, you know. We had staff, we had officers, we had a successful business. Then I heard about a guy called Gethin Butler who cycled a route called Land's End to John O'Groats, which I'd never heard of at the time, in under 2 days. I thought, I wonder how close I can get to that record. I mean, I knew I was never going to break the record because I didn't own a bicycle, but I did wonder. So that was it. I bought a bike on eBay and I even made a flyer. I took the train down to Land's End and cycled as fast as I could, as hard as I could, pushing everything in to see how close I could get. I was a little bit off the 2-day record by the time I got to John O'Groats. It took me 25 days and put me firmly in my place that maybe this ultra-distance cycling record stuff was not really for me. For the next few years, I did a few things like the Gloucestershire cheese rolling, where I came second. And I climbed Kilimanjaro in this penguin suit. Whoa, stinks. But then soon, even the adventure stuff fell by the wayside as the nursery photography got busier and busier. And I remember reaching 30, sitting back, thinking, I really believed I would be travelling the world by then, but I wasn't. Instead, my life was a 6-foot square, white background, covered in all sorts of excrement, photographing crying babies just to make money. And I was not happy. So I walked into the office one day and asked James to buy me out. Right, mate, I'll give you £1. I said I'll take it. And there we have the Jersey £1 note that James gave me. I knew I wanted to go travelling, but I had no money. So I then thought, what if I tried to break some sort of world record? Maybe I'll get sponsorship. So in essence, I became an adventurer because I was skint. So the record I chose was the round the world cycling record. So on the 18th of February, there I stood on the start line of the world's first ever global bike race, along with 9 other competitors, aiming to cycle around the world the fastest. And then my dreams came crashing down. I don't remember much from the accident. I remember going to bed the night before and then waking up in hospital the next day. So after 3 weeks of recovery, I carried on with a neck brace and cycled another 12,000 miles all the way to my local pub in North London. I remember getting back thinking, well, I had my chance, that was it. I've had my year away, that was great, let me get back into normal employment. So I moved in with my mum into a 1-bedroom basement flat in Cheltenham and tried to get work. I signed on to the Dole, went to the job centre and applied for as many cycling related jobs as I could find. After 6 months of not even getting an interview for any sort of job that I applied for, I decided, well, maybe I should do another adventure. It'll just get me out the house again and it'll give me something to do for another 6 months. And that's when I thought of swimming the length of Britain. It was the toughest 4.5 months of my life as I swam up Cornwall and Devon, across to Wales and across to Ireland, up to Northern Ireland, back to Scotland, around Cape Wrath, and eventually the final sprint to John O'Groats. And I thought, well, I've cycled and swum Land's End to John O'Groats, I might as well finish the triathlon with running it. So in 2016, after my first failed attempt, because I was running taking a selfie, I've still got the newspaper article, I had another crack at it and created Sean Conway Running Britain on Discovery Channel. I loved the idea of doing a multidiscipline event, so I came up with the world's longest triathlon, a 4,200 mile swim bike run around the coast of Britain. Using the fitness of the triathlon, at the end of 2016 I attempted the world record for cycling Route 66 as part of the first ever Route 66 bike race. Unfortunately, 4 days into the bike race, after leading at one point, I got a knee injury and had to pull out. I spent 6 months recovering before I decided to attempt another world record, the fastest person to cycle across Europe. So in 2017, I went out to Portugal, Cabo da Roca, to cycle the 4,000-mile route from the edge of Portugal to the Ural Mountains in Russia. But again, 4 days in, I got the same knee injury and had to pull out. I went into a really dark place. I kept thinking about what I should have done. I should have given up the photography earlier. I should have trained a bit harder. But then I realized none of this stuff is going to help me at all. I need to think forward. I need to think about the future. And actually, if I just recovered again, changed my strategy, the Europe record was still possible. So in 2018, I went back to Cabo da Roca to attempt the Europe Cycle World Record again. And after 24 days and some change, 8 hours ahead of the world record holder, I arrived in Ufa. After the Europe ride, I got home and I knew instinctively that I wanted to have a little bit of time out and start a family. I married the beautiful Caroline, and a year later we had our wonderful son Monty. So that brings us nicely to my 40th birthday. What have I learned? I've learned to be level-headed. A good day today doesn't mean tomorrow's going to be good, and a bad day today definitely doesn't mean tomorrow's going to be bad either. I've learned to work hard, I've learned to be resilient, I've learned to train my ass off when I need to, I've learned to plan ahead, and I've learned to consider the small things, because often those are the things that can derail you. And most of all, I've just learned to believe in myself. It's only since believing that I could do these things that I was able to achieve them. When I look back now, I didn't really believe I could be a National Geographic photographer. I just thought of it and I liked the idea of it, but I really didn't believe it. And sometimes you just need to believe.